The food service, hospitality, and retail industries are evolving in ways you've never heard of until now. Hosted by global industry technovator Rob Grimes and powered by the IFBTA, TechBytes is your go-to podcast, putting technology innovation and trends on the menu.
Rob Grimes with the IFBTA and TechBytes, and I'm really pleased for two reasons to be having a conversation this morning at the Hospitality Tech Expo at the Excel Center in London. And here are the two reasons. First, it's always great to be at a hospitality tech show, but even more so, I'm sitting with an old friend, new old friend, I don't know, something like that, with Peter Backman with theDelivery.World, and you're here to deliver in a conversation.
I'm looking forward to it, Rob.
Well, we've had many conversations in the past over the years, right?
And sometimes we've understood what the other person's been saying.
That's true. But I will tell you that what has amazed me over all the time that we've known each other is that it seems to me that when we first met, you weren't so much into tech. You knew about tech. And you were certainly bringing together all the different players here in the UK, but actually we've spoken together in Dubai, I believe, and some other places as well. But you really have sort of moved into a tech area and the whole food delivery piece.
Absolutely. I started in the food market. I'm a food person by background. And I started selling information to food companies who were selling into the food service market. And that's when we first met.
Well, a lot of data insights.
Yeah, correct.
Were they using the word data analytics at that time, or was it just
statistics?
Statistics. There you go.
And over the years, the market has changed, and I have changed with it. And I noticed 10 years ago that delivery was doing things, so I started taking more and more interest in it. And a couple of years ago, I launched my new business, which is part statistics, data, insights, but primarily a media company.
Right, but well, you're a media company, but you're really bringing, well, media companies provide a lot of information, but you're really helping to educate the marketplace and bring people together in the delivery world.
I like to think of myself as an influencer, but yeah, it's about enlightening the world with what's going on, because delivery is still in its early stages. So there's an awful lot happening, a lot of companies coming up, a lot of companies dying. It's really a fascinating business.
So I want to point out, so first of all, I'd like to be an influencer, but I want to be an influencer only for one reason. I want to be able to walk the Consumer Electronics Show and have people give me electronics. I haven't gotten that stage. Now,
we'll work hard at it.
But I keep working at it, but it just doesn't happen. But the word influencer, but actually maybe more of a forecaster of what's going on, I think it sort of plays here, because you said that you really started to focus on this area about 10 years ago. But in reality, it was COVID that really made this thing jump to where everybody had to get into delivery.
For some companies, restaurant companies would have died if they didn't do delivery. So yeah, COVID gave the industry a boost. If you look at the graphs, it was growing before COVID. COVID came along and it just shot through the roof. And in many countries, I won't say all, it leveled off and it's now growing again. So it's continuing where the graph would have been if there hadn't been COVID.
Well, I think, in the restaurant industry, everybody talks about day parts and revenue centers.
Yeah.
And it's almost like they've created, so if you were in the QSR market, the drive-through might be considered a revenue center or a day part, if they're measuring it as separately. But now, the holy grail in food service always was, how do I get an extra visit a month? How do I do an extra meal? Not just the check average, right? Well, I think the whole delivery piece is a day part in its own, and people have discovered that you can, in fact, get restaurant quality meals delivered at home.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the restaurants have a number of channels for revenues. You say drive-through, takeout, and all that sort of stuff. And the rules of delivery are still being learned, and I think that's what makes it exciting.
What did you say? The rules?
The rules.
So what are the rules?
Well, okay, there are unwritten rules about what what makes it appealing for customers?
Well, I would say don't eat the fries out of somebody's open package. I think some companies learn that. Is that a rule?
Yeah. No, I think yes, it is a rule. But
Okay.
I'm thinking about
All right. So what are the fundamental rules?
Well, about whether you focus on profit or volume, and what you do about that is still uncertain when it comes to delivery. The how much you change your operational style or your store layout to accommodate.
Well, people never think about that.
Absolutely.
I mean, they didn't think about that when it happened with online ordering, and they didn't change how they built, and in catering before, if they added a catering practice, a lot of times they didn't rebuild or have a separate area to actually do the catering orders then have it fulfilled, right? So this makes it even worse.
Yeah, but when you look at it from the restaurant point of view, they got it, certainly in the UK, less so in the US, for example, they got very limited space.
Right.
And the building was built 10, 20, 30, maybe 100 years ago. So there's a very little you can do to reorganize it. So that is part of the problem.
But are you finding people, well, it's funny because I never hear anybody talk about ghost kitchens at all, but yet you and I actually showed up at some ghost kitchen conferences a number of years ago. So is that the opportunity to actually go to remote centers like that?
There are definitely opportunities. In the States, people don't talk about ghost kitchens because they bellied up, basically. My reading of it is that they still operate, but there was so much investment and so much excitement about it, and that was disappointing. So that's why people say ghost. There's nothing.
Well, they start thinking about dark kitchens now, so you can prepare things when a kitchen is dark using excess time and facilities.
Well, that's interesting. We can have a whole discussion about ghost kitchens, dark kitchens, etc.
Okay.
But in the UK, companies like Growth Kitchen, which were operators of ghost kitchens,
right,
have pivoted to working with brands, restaurant brands, brick and mortar brands, and taking those brands into other people's kitchens. So take a brand like the Athenian, which is a Greek brand,
sure,
and delivering it out of a pub.
So just to be clear on that, do they become like the licensee or the master distributor, so to speak?
Yes, it's very much along the franchising model. So
they go ahead and they buy the franchise, and then they go find the sites to go bring it out to more and more units and do expansion that way.
The model is slightly different, but in terms of
so how do they work the technology in a case like that? Is it their technology that they're using, or is it they're using the brands?
Other people's technology.
Because you would want people to be able to order seamlessly and not necessarily focus on, am I buying from this brand or another, even though they may be representing multiple brands.
Yes, but if you're taking a brand and putting it into somebody else's kitchen, that kitchen is going to have an investment in technology. So making all those parts work is a challenge.
Mm-hmm. Well, it not only is an investment in technology as it relates to taking the order, but then in fulfilling the order, the integration between that and the production system, at that location, which, who knows what that location is using, in there to do that integration.
But I find, I don't know if you do, but I find this whole thing fascinating with the amount of technology, solving micro problems, solving macro problems, bits of technology got to connect with other bits of technology that they weren't originally designed to do. As a non-technology person, I find it bewildering, but also very interesting because it's constantly changing.
Well, it is, and it's very hard to keep up. I think the thing that people were scared about before was anything that was based in the cloud, but today, they assume that. But on the other hand, it makes it easier to add multiple pieces of technology together, even though there's a possible security issue and all that. But it does enable it to work a little bit more seamlessly.
Well, you understand technology much better than I do. I sense what you're saying is right. When I talk to people, I sense that, but you've put my thoughts into words. So technology, just moving outside the hospitality sector, it seems to me that technology is slowly coming of age. Mm-hmm. It's been around for...
Right. Well, look, we are sitting here in a pavilion that just opened up in a show that since I can see the other wall all the way down, it's a show that I would say is at least 1/3 technology in a fairly large room.
Yeah, more than 1/3. Yeah,
and I haven't even walked in the other areas where I know that they're color coded differently than the one we're in, but there's technology in there because I saw AV in there. It's a matter of what do you define,
the only
right?
area where there isn't technology is my favorite area, which is the food section, where you get all sorts of freebies.
So now that's interesting that you say that.
Well, it's interesting.
So wait a minute, but technology is everywhere. So even in the food area, one of the things I found interesting is I took a walk up the front, and there's some people who are displaying, basically campers that are being used for, well, you have to have technology in those things to have a food truck, right?
Yeah.
And so it's going to be there even in the food area, even if you're sampling. Plus, over time, I believe the evolution of technology is going to be in food technology itself, which, by the way, there is a food tech association, which means agri-tech. So if you have plant-based or cell-based, that is technology.
Well, okay, so you can extend technology to stainless steel ovens because they're the original tech.
But they're connected. See, connected kitchens are absolutely coming around.
Yeah, absolutely. But having to work within the stainless steel area.
Absolutely.
Which has been going for 100 years or more.
And why do you think that that's a problem or a challenge?
It's a mindset. I don't know too much about that area, but there is a mindset about making stuff out of metal and recognizing that technology is needed, but how do I actually do it in my machine?
So I talked to some food equipment manufacturers about this, and every time you have a conversation with somebody, every time I talk with you, I learn something new. I learn something new when I have these conversations. So they gave me a clue. Because I was trying to figure out, I understand the idea of Internet of Things. I understand the idea of connected equipment, meaning, in my view, plug something in and it instantly connects, right? Okay, I got that. But here was the secret they told me. Anytime you see a piece of equipment that has a digital display on it, like a microwave, but a digital display, it's actually connecting. That is the clue that tells you. So if it's a drink machine, if it's a frying machine, if it's an oven or refrigerator, if there's a digital display on it that you can program, imagine your air conditioning system in your house, a digital display, right? Not just regular buttons. It's connected.
I take that absolutely. And I wasn't trying to suggest that the stainless steel sector isn't technologically going to advance technologically, but it's tricky. That's all I'm saying.
Right. Well, I get that. I certainly get that. So you had a little bit of time to walk around. I took a quick walk around. I was sort of curious if there was any first overall impression of what the theme is just by walking around or anything that...
One thing that struck me is, and I'm comparing with last year, there aren't the e-bikes that were around then, but that's okay. I don't know whether we read anything into that or not.
But there is EV charging stations and things here. Absolutely. I thought that was interesting.
Absolutely. My overall impression, and it may just be that I'm, seeing what I think.
Right.
That the booths here are more advanced than they were last year. They're not quite they're not amateurish. They're more constructed in a way that expresses confidence that these people are here. And
I think it's quite clear that people spent money on their booths that are here. There's some very large ones, more than last year, and some people have taken some prominent positions, up at the front. So I have noticed that, for me, not living in the UK, there are vendors here that I've not heard of before. I'm sure to get around. Now, I have not figured out yet, because we're only just starting today, whether they are startups who are spending money and said, okay, they Googled the word technology restaurants, right? Yeah. So that's how you end up there, right? But I'm not sure of that. But that is an impression that there's a lot more. There's also a decent mix of hotel and restaurant technology here, and then payment processors and banks.
Yeah.
Usually I'll see payment processors, but there's at least 4 banks that are actually here.
I visited my bank, which is just over there, and they gave me a beanie hat. So
they should have given you cash. I found it. If your bank's over there, they all have the green shirts on. I said to them, good color for a bank.
Yes. Well, that's Lloyd's for you.
So is there something then? All right, so no bikes. Now they were really.
There may be bikes.
There may be, because I thought they had a
number that I saw
takeaway
last
piece
week. Yeah.
in here, and they've shifted up a little bit because they have something called hospitality innovation here in a theater. So I think the theater themes are sort of interesting.
Yeah.
But it is a rather good mix of technologies that are here. So not just POS.
No, absolutely. And you've got to work out what you're actually seeing. And if you're not a tech person, it's not obvious what this booth is selling or what that booth is selling, and they have words up which don't necessarily accord with what the non-tech person sees.
Well, first of all, if they're displaying something that have a lot of words up that you don't intuitively understand, you pick up your phone, you understand how to use it intuitively. So I always find that interesting to see, including in the IFPTA's booth, that you should intuitively understand what we do, even if you don't know what the words, mean, the initials.
I mean, that boils down to simple marketing or not simple, but the basics of marketing. Being clear about what it is you do and what you want your customers to think they're doing.
Right. Now, you're going to be speaking here tomorrow.
Correct.
And so what is I can guess overall the subject, but maybe a little.
Okay, so it's about delivery, and it's about the partnerships to profitability on the basis that profitability is incredibly difficult to achieve wherever you are in delivery, unless you're a lawyer. And
why is that?
Why is that?
Is that because of the cost of the delivery or the labor? Or?
I think that I think one basic rule that you've got running a restaurant is a low margin business. You have to be very efficient.
Right.
And then along comes this company that wants to charge you 30% for its services, and it inserts itself into your operation. So there's pressure on the restaurant with these additional costs, and there's pressure on the delivery companies because they've got to deliver on the last mile.
Don't you think? Okay, but don't you think that the consumer, is getting used to the idea of paying for the delivery? Even if you're doing something like Amazon and you buy a Prime membership, you are paying an extra fee in order to be able to get.
That's definitely coming along. I mean, you can now see that consumers spend more on delivered food than they do for a walk-in. So it makes it's changing. The world is coming to terms with delivery, and that's why I think profitability will creep through. But there are lots of changes that a lot of people you can work with, and that's what I'll be talking about tomorrow.
Well, we're just going to go ahead and take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and really just talk about a couple of the other elements and just hearing a little bit more about those rules, because I'm just such a person who loves to follow rules. So we'll be back in a moment.
With the rapid expansion of technology in the food and beverage industries, finding the right supplier can become overwhelming and complicated. To simplify this process, the IFBTA created Exchange. Exchange is a powerful search tool where users can easily narrow down their technology search and refine results by application type, geography served, department, and more. Browse resources and learn more about the industry's technology suppliers at exchange.ifbta.org. Now, back to the show.
So we're back, and I'm Rob Grimes with Peter Backman of Delivery.World, and we're here at the Hospitality Tech Expo. But actually, if you saw the podcast a few weeks ago about this beforehand, it's actually more than hospitality tech because there are different zones and things here. And, Peter has been around in the data provision media business and providing information, but he's going to be speaking here tomorrow on delivery, which has become a favorite subject of his, and which in the first half we pointed out, he was sort of at the forefront of this because 10 years ago, and you think about delivery, but we sort of left the conversation about some of the challenges and the cost. And so I'd like to just sort of get your thoughts on that. So I get the idea about that there is an added added cost. It's almost like the hotel and airline industry. There were always those added costs in there for taking the reservation, right? And everybody had their hands in it from the global distribution system. So by the time you bought a room, you think you're paying a certain amount. That's not what the hotel is getting, right? So we sort of are headed the same way here.
In principle, I think you're right. Yeah, but there are lots of things that work well with delivery. Primarily, that's what customers want. And there are things that don't work or are problematic and need solving from the restaurant's point of view. And one is cost. Secondly is losing contact with the customer. And thirdly, not having information.
Okay, so I want to make sure I got this right. So cost, losing contact with the customer, having the data and information. I would also say perhaps the food quality and things like that, which is always a concern as well, right?
Yes. All of those things are being addressed in the delivery system.
So if we break it down, so on the cost, so the cost components, which we discussed before the break, are certainly going to be the cost of the delivery itself, which a lot of that is labor intensive in there.
All of it is.
Well, let's come back to that. Okay, so it's labor intensive. All of it is. Okay. And then, the cost that the person who's taking the orders, they have to make money too in this. Okay, so they've got that piece in there. I would also say that there's some other costs that are involved in there, which also go over to quality. The packaging may be different in there. So you may have a higher overall total item cost in there. And by the way, I did notice here in the UK, even when I got a Starbucks this morning, I got charged 5 cents for the cup for takeaway, and it wasn't because I got an extra cup. It was because of sustainability, and people are very focused. So that's going to be a balancing going forward, because people do not want you to be doing a lot of paper products and things and sustainability. So that's a whole different thing. Yep. So if we look at the cost of labor, before the pandemic, all I heard about when it came to delivery was the cost of delivery. And people were making the decision, should I have my own drivers doing this or not? And now you start to see in the gig economy, especially if you're in remote areas, software actually parceling it out, not just to the big people, but to the little people to get a single piece, right?
Batching or bundling or stacking, it comes in various names.
Right, okay.
And I've written a white paper on that with a great app called Rodeo.
Okay, so there's the back channel piece, how you distribute there, the choice of doing it yourself or not. I maintain, because never's a long time. First of all, I heard people stop complaining about the cost of delivery after COVID. You're bringing it up now, and we all know it exists. But for whatever reason, when I talk to people, they don't bring that up so much anymore. They're not going to do it because they've accepted they have to do it. It's new revenue, okay? Yeah. However, you also mentioned EV, or you mentioned not seeing scooters here, right? I maintain that if we go to autonomous vehicles, which were being tested before COVID by Uber and Lyft, and I see them now when I go to the Consumer Electronics Show, if we can do autonomous delivery, and I'm not talking about drones, up in the air kind of stuff, if we can do that and cut out the labor, now what?
I agree absolutely. In some parts of the world, it works, because that's how people think. Or on university campuses, it works.
Absolutely, they are doing it on university campuses.
But in the wide world, there is a vast amount of regulatory undergrowth to get through until you get to that point. So I agree with you. Never say
regulations
never.
Always get in the way.
But the regulation is going to take a long time.
They do, hang on. They do until you get a pandemic. Because what I saw is regulations that said people weren't allowed to deliver alcohol. I don't know about here. All of a sudden, they're delivering alcohol and you can't go backwards, right? So until you
are you arguing for a new pandemic?
Not at all.
Okay.
No, I certainly am not. But I think that people are a lot more open-minded. Regulations get in the way till another industry solves the problem. So when you take a look at payments, remote payments, data security, it isn't necessarily the restaurant industry that caused that. It's all the retail transactions. And so we get to take advantage of that. So it's a whole different thing, right?
But this is my argument, or the point I'd make is it's all about time. the amount of time you talk. It's not going to happen next week, or probably not next year, or even.
But the speed of technology is much faster than it used to be, right?
The speed of regulation isn't.
The speed of regulation. Okay. All right. So the speed of regulation, we'll have to come up with a term for that one.
Okay.
But we'll figure that one out. Okay. So we talked about the cost of it. So what about the food quality, and how are they going to maintain their brand standards?
Well, okay, so if you've got some products travel quite well, and some products travel very well. I mean, sushi or anything in a sauce like Chinese or whatever travels okay, providing you've got the right packaging. There are other products that need much more attention. Fries, for example, fries have to be developed so that they can travel. And things like steak are very problematic. So one way and another, you've got to have the right product, but then you've got to have restaurants who are sufficiently involved in what they're trying to do to find a solution.
Do you think we're going to get to the point where, like I use steak, anybody who cooks a steak knows, if they're really focused on a good steak, that you really don't serve it right away. You let it sit for a little bit because it keeps cooking. So do you think we'll get to the part where food might be partially done and then finished on the way?
Well, that happens.
It happens?
It happens in the UK and in other countries with meal kits, for example.
Meal kits.
So, but that is then not immediate. It's normally delivered to you 24, 48 hours after you've placed the order, and then you've got to spend 40 minutes in the kitchen finishing the food, but you get a restaurant quality steak at the end.
That's true. But the one thing is, we've educated the market that it is possible to get a restaurant quality steak. Well, nobody thought that before.
What's happening is that people are finding problems and finding solutions. And, it may be that we'll never, ever get a restaurant quality steak, but maybe we will. Who knows?
You will. So, what about culture? Because you see a lot of people, outside delivery services, and sometimes they're picking up 2 or 3, which is, by the way, a positive benefit to somebody who's doing a family order they can pick up, right? But how do you maintain your culture of because you talk about losing that one-to-one, relationship with the customer.
About the restaurant.
The restaurant, not losing its culture, but also presenting itself properly to the guest.
Yeah, I mean, it's a challenge, because if your culture is about offering a great service to the customer at the table, then you can't do that, because when the only experience the customer has is a brown bag from a guy on a bike. So you have to find other ways of doing it.
By the way, I would point out to you, it doesn't have to be table service, because I did a podcast a few weeks ago where we were talking about voice AI in the drive-thru, and companies are actually looking at how do they have that order taken by voice AI, but maintaining their culture.
Yeah.
In the person taking it, how they ask the questions, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was going to have a great long explanation, starting off with the fact that it's to do with table service, but then it extends into other areas.
It does.
So I started with table service because that's often
that's how most people see that contact, right?
And that will change, and restaurants are changing, I think, and there will probably be a new breed of restaurant where the culture is expressed through the packaging and the delivery, and what you get in store is a copy of that rather than the other way around. Well, not a copy, but aligns with that.
I don't know, if you use your imagination in this, I've gotten these things where the business card, talks to you and everything. Maybe we're going to, cost, I get it, but maybe we're going to get to, greeting cards. There you go. You'll get a greeting card. You go to the store, you get somebody a birthday card. It can sing, but you can record your own thing. Maybe we're going to get to the point where that packaging, when you open it up, it explains what it sing. Happy birthday. There you go. That would be actually pretty funny, because there are people that do, those kinds of things. But it actually could explain to you, let me tell you about the menu that you're getting, right?
Let's not get too excited about this, Rob, because I think we've got a business idea that we don't want other people.
Yeah, I know. that's what happens. People share ideas and then they become that $1 million idea. So
but we'll probably find somebody.
but we don't have to tell anybody about it. We're just right here. So we got it. To just sort of conclude on this thought, where do you see the biggest opportunity is when it comes to delivery, catering, takeout? What is it that we're really not thinking about that you're evangelizing about and saying, this is the opportunity you may be missing, or here's the future we should be thinking about?
I take a very practical view about the future, and I say that at the moment, the industry is not profitable anywhere. And what is going to happen is a march to profitability. That's not very exciting, but until that happens, bigger changes can't take place. What those bigger changes are, I think remains to be seen. But the hospitality, the food service, the restaurant market is hugely innovative. And in a few years' time, we're going to see quite a different world, including packs. When you open it up, it sings happy birthday to you.
There you go. And also alternative pickup spots that may not be the last mile, but might be a locker.
Well, of course, that's happening anyway.
It is happening, but it's...
And delivery to you sitting on your park bench, that's been around for donkey's years. All of these things are possible. They're all exciting, and the industry is hugely innovative.
Well, listen, Peter, it is always good to have a conversation. We haven't done one on the TechBytes podcast before. You have your own podcast now. You do realize this has to be reciprocal, right?
Some of these topics that we've just talked about, we've covered fairly recently.
Right. But, really, you have, it's not just the UK. You really have been in the forefront of talking about this and also looking at how people use the insights and data, not just in the UK, but in the US, over in the Middle East, all over. And I see that as a great experience.
I've just written in my newsletter, which is also called The Delivery World, about the opportunities in the Caribbean and in Africa. Two vastly different
Well, so here's the deal. So we'll have to go ahead and make an arrangement to show up together at one of those places, because it's always best to be able to say, well, I don't know, I have fun coming over here, but we will continue the conversation. Indeed. So Peter Backman with Delivery.World, and I'm Rob Grimes with the IFBTA and TechBytes. This podcast is brought to you by the International Food and Beverage Technology Association. The IFBTA is the industry's voice of food service, hospitality, and retail technology, providing thought leadership as your single, impartial, and go-to resource. The IFBTA offers in-person and online communities to connect with your peers, the exchange, an all-encompassing global technology resource, and an industry-wide professional education and certification program. The bottom line is the IFBTA is your place to gather, learn, and share in conversations like the one we're having today. Thank you for joining us on this episode of TechBytes, powered by the IFBTA. I'm Rob Grimes, your host, and I look forward to taking our next bite of technology together.